This is Natasha here from the Nixer team, and I'm super excited to be running a session on starting a cloud career with all of you today. So where are you tuning in from? It is so cool to see everyone streaming in from New York, across Eventbrite, across the Nixer community. Maybe you found us on Instagram, on YouTube, on Facebook, on TikTok. So I'm very curious to everyone that's here in the chat right now. Where in the US are you from? Would you be happy with adding, which city you're based in, which state you're based in? I would love to know and get to meet all of you. We have some new faces in the chat today, so hi to everyone. I can see we have someone called James in the chat. Hi, James. Oh, okay, awesome. Melissa says hello. Hi, Melissa. Where are you based? Thank you, everyone, for saying hi. Oh, wow. We have someone called George from Manhattan. Hello, George from Manhattan. Oh, cool. We have a Kiwi in the room as well. Hello, hello. Lisa, nice to meet you, Lisa. All right. So while we're still waiting for, 1 to 2 minutes for the event to start, please get to know each other in the chat, say hello, and also perhaps you can even add any questions you'd like to answer today. Do you have a burning question that you want to know about starting a cloud career in New York? Add it to the chat, and we can talk about that at the end if we have time for FAQ or any other burning questions you might have. Awesome. Well, this is really cool. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so we have someone says, what is a cloud engineer? What is cloud computing? Yeah. We have Rikitha asking, is cloud in New York? Cool. Awesome, James. Thank you so much. Okay, I can see. I know that there is cloud in New York, but how do I even get started? Very, very good question. The moment you understand the what, you start to wonder, then what's the how? How do I get there? How can I get started? How can I be in that space? And we'll definitely be talking about that too. Cool. Thank you so much, Shima, for asking, oh, can we have some more AWS projects on DevOps? Thank you for all your work. Oh, absolutely. So over the next season, Nextwork is focusing on AI projects, and we can definitely have a look at whether there's some sort of crossover between AI and DevOps. In the meantime, though, I hope you're really happy with the series of DevOps projects that we have right now. It's about 14 that you can do, ranging from building a CI/CD pipeline to Kubernetes. There's Terraform that you can explore as well, Docker. Check it out. Check it out. Cool. Thank you, everyone. All right, so let's get started with today. Thank you, everyone, for saying hi and all of those questions. It is super nice to see a little community starting to brew up in New York. And with that, let's talk about what we're covering today. So today we will be talking about 4 different topics. Why cloud computing? Why New York? Which path should you pick, and how do you even start? Out of these 4, is there one that you want to talk about most? You can vote for it now in the chat as well, and then we can spend even more time in that section too. But this is really the ideal journey to take you through so that you can start from, what is cloud computing? Why does it exist? All the way to how you can put yourself on that path. Check it out, see if this is something that really interests you, and there are definitely opportunities out there that you can grab. So let's start with number 1. Why cloud computing? And what is it anyway? If anyone knows what cloud computing is, add it to the chat right now. How would you define cloud computing? How would you explain cloud computing to a friend? Give yourself a minute to think about it. And if you don't know, if you're new to it, that's okay. You can also say, not sure. Thank you, Melissa. Yeah, Melissa says, oh, I'm new, not too sure. That's all good. Cool. We've got Jane in the chat saying, hello. Maybe cloud computing is something to do with uploading photos into the cloud, storing things in the cloud. Yeah, that's a definite big part of cloud computing. That's a good point. So when you are saving photos in a cloud software or some sort of cloud storage solution, examples are iCloud. There's also Google Cloud or Google Photos that you might be familiar with. The reason why you can store all this without really needing a hard drive is because of cloud computing and cloud storage. And the use cases of that is so extensive. It's not just about saving things, it's also being able to store something somewhere so that you can get access to it in your application. For example, we use cloud storage to keep our photos, but a company like Netflix would use cloud storage to store all of their content, like their movies, as well as their TV shows, so that when when a user wants to stream a TV show, they can get access to that TV show right away and start streaming it because there's a network or some sort of distribution set up that can move that original piece, that TV show or that movie that you want to watch, and bring that close to the user so that they can actually start streaming it and watching it too. That's a very, very good point. Thank you so much. Cool. So we have a broader answer in the chat now. Cloud computing is about being able to use processes or computing power that is done in the cloud instead of in person with physical servers. Yeah, that is a really, really good definition of cloud computing. It really is not just about storage. Storage is one of the many, many functions of cloud computing, but it really is just what can you do on a computer, on a physical computer? And is there any way you can do that in the cloud instead? So, you can store things in a physical computer, but you can also develop apps in a physical computer. You can run calculations and processes in a computer. There's also all different kinds of solutions that you can build in a computer, like security solutions. And once you've built something, how do you bring it out into the world? There are physical solutions for that, but are there cloud solutions for that too? Awesome work, everyone. So with that done, I think a way that you can really get to know cloud computing is to understand some of the top use cases of it. And we have S3, which is a top AWS service for storage. We have EC2, which is a top AWS service for running virtual computers, which basically means running processes, running applications, running code in the cloud instead of in a physical server. That's an awesome use case. Nice work. There's RDS, which is about managing your databases easily. So data is such a big topic, and data is being stored in databases for a lot of applications so that you can retrieve the data easily. You have files that can be organized in data. You have social media posts that can be organized in databases as data. When you're using a bank app, all of those transactions, they're being recorded somewhere as data. And RDS is a great example of an AWS service that's used as a cloud database solution. So you don't need to store all of that data in physical servers. The moment things are stored in physical servers or rely on physical servers, you're bringing yourself a lot of costs or a lot of risk. Because what if that physical server gets broken into, it gets destroyed, it's down, then everything, if you don't have backups, everything might be gone with that physical server. But it's a lot harder to destroy it when it's in the cloud, where it's a lot easier to create backups, where it's a lot easier to have replicas across the world, where it's also a lot easier to have version control going. So there is a previous version of what you've created stored somewhere. All right, team. Thank you. And we also have Lambda. All right, so Lambda is another top AWS service, and this one is for automating tasks or for running code in a very, very fast and efficient way. You have code that you can run in physical servers. You can, in your local computer, write up a piece of code, use the local computer's terminal to run that code again and again. But what if Lambda, which is a cloud solution called, I think it is a function as a service, and what it does is you can use event triggers that makes it automatically run code when things happen. For example, if you have an application and you say, when a user uploads a photo, can you automatically remove the background? Or can you automatically run this other piece of code to process that image? Lambda can be that code that gets triggered automatically, it just wakes up every time the customer uploads the photo, and it runs that piece of code automatically, and it puts the output, that processed image, maybe in S3, maybe in storage for you. And the great thing about Lambda is because it's all run in the cloud and it gets woken up by events, it means that you're not always paying for Lambda. You're only paying for it when you need to use it. Now, I know that was a big crash course on 4 different ways you can be using cloud computing or 4 different services within cloud computing. If you have any questions, always know that you're welcome to chuck them in the chat. We can always talk about it even more. But I can see from the chat that we have James and Melissa saying, thanks so much. I'm keen to hear more about the career side of things. Totally fair. All right, now let's jump into it. We will talk about the career related things in a second. Just before we move into that, here's a quick shout out to an example company that is truly using these services that we were mentioning before. All right, so an example company is Canva. And if you're not familiar with Canva, it is a tool that you can use to create, edit, export graphics and videos. So if you know Photoshop, Canva is often thought of like a simpler version of Photoshop that you can just use in your browser without having to download an app. Now, Canva has 100 million users, which is a crazy number. So imagine the number of images it needs to process when someone is uploading a photo and they say, remove the background. And imagine the amount of machine learning and AI power it's using in order to run some of its AI features, like type in a text and will generate an image for you. Or, oh, type in a text and we can literally generate entire presentations for you. Again, it's analyzing 400 terabytes of data and 100 billion events a week. How does it do all of that? It's just such an insane operation to be running at such a big scale. So as you might imagine, this is where AWS becomes a very, very handy partner for Canva, as you have virtual computers, EC2, you have storage, and the data solutions all coming together to support Canva's infrastructure. These are not the only AWS services Canva will be using, but Canva is a true user of AWS, and they truly use EC2 and S3 as well as a database service in order to run a lot of its processes. All right. So now getting onto where James and Melissa were asking about why New York and the career side of things. There are some very, very exciting reasons why New York is such a great place for starting a cloud career. And we're going to run through probably about 5 or 6 reasons, accompanied by real screenshots of real websites and pages that you can visit to explore more. All right, reason number 1, there are AWS customers in New York. That's the start of it all. A cloud career, an AWS career, in a lot of ways, if you're not starting like a business yourself, it does start with an existing business or big business wanting to use it. And in this case, if you go into AWS customer stories or success stories, try searching up, New York in the search tab, and you'll see that there are at least 16 user case studies that feature a company that's either based in New York, headquartered in New York, or they have operations in New York. Once you know that they would require some sort of talent to help make that happen. So whether it is hiring someone in-house or employing a consultant to make it happen, this is where a cloud career could really shine, by working with a company that is using AWS. And clearly, there are quite a few in New York. These are just their top customers. It's not like only 16 businesses in the entirety of New York that uses it. But as you can see, these are some really, really big companies or some up-and-coming startups that are using it here as well. Now I'm going to demonstrate how you can start exploring this by yourself. So if you'd like, you can go into your web browser and type in AWS success stories like this, all right? And then as you can see here, there is a link here for customer success stories. Click into here, scroll all the way down to this section. It's starting to look familiar now, I hope. So scroll all the way down here and then search New York. Great. And that's how you can see that there are 16 results of different companies that you can see. Salesforce hosts its 2023 New York City Summit on AWS. Great. Clearly there's something that happened during that project happening in New York. Let's Get Checked is a global healthcare solutions company. Wow, it is co-headquartered in Dublin and New York. Nice. Over the last 150 years, New York-based Goldman Sachs has grown into a global investment banking, so on and so forth. And you can even see how they're using AWS in these use cases stories. So I'd highly recommend clicking into one and really getting a feel for, or watching a video of how companies are using AWS. Oh, we can even see like there are case studies that you can click into to read more as well, and really understand, what are the services they're using, who do they work with, what are the titles of the people that is talking about this. We have someone that is the vice president of cloud storage, cloud strategy, content and technology solutions at probably a AWS kind of consulting partner for Goldman Sachs in this example. But there are so many that you can check out. Warner Brother Games, New York. Wow, there's even a preserving history with the New York Philharmonic. Wow, this is so interesting, boutique investment management firms with operations in New York and Mumbai. So these are some really fun stories to read into to get a feel of cloud computing beyond just the technicals around, oh, what is it? But really, how are people using it? I hope you enjoy exploring that. So that was resource number 1 that you can explore. Now, resource number 2, search up cloud computing or AWS in LinkedIn jobs. So here is a search of cloud computing in New York. And now you get to start to explore what is the market opportunity out there. And as you can see, there's quite a few going on. So let us have fun in LinkedIn right now and have a look at that together. So let's click into LinkedIn. Let's click into jobs and let's look at cloud computing in New York. And this is where you can find 18,000 results for cloud computing, starting with like internship roles, associate solutions engineering roles, and you can even see pay rates for some of these roles as well. There's a site reliability engineer. And if it doesn't say cloud in the title, have a look a bit more, in the job description. Interesting. Whoa, interesting. Well, maybe we can't find cloud in this one. I wonder why it's rocked up as a result. Maybe it's a sponsored job posting. Who knows? I wonder why it rocked up here. But you can also find so many different ones. Cloud support engineer, which we'll talk about a little bit more later on. Site reliability engineer. Oh, here we go again, site reliability. And you can see Kubernetes, CI/CD pipelines. Oh, cool. There are a few AWS related key terms coming up. So that's cool. If we were to search up AWS in New York, you can see that there are 12,700 results as well. So have fun looking through all of these and have a feel of even what kind of roles are out there. This is a great source of inspiration for you to figure out what path you want to get into, because you now get to see, what are the available pathways just in New York alone. Cool. Do you have a job board that you like as well, that you like to see? Or is there a job board you enjoy using to find opportunities in New York? Add them to the chat. So that was resource number 2, which is to find cloud computing roles in New York. And I'm sure you'll be welcomed with many, many different results, which goes to show that hiring is definitely happening in the cloud industry. All right, so many things happening. Resource number 3, why New York businesses are moving to cloud platforms, trends and insights. So this is an example article, but you can always have a look at what are the trends in the city or the region you're based in. So in this case, you can always look up articles around migration, cloud migration, which is the act of companies moving their systems from on-premise systems, which are the physical servers, over to cloud computing, which are the cloud-based, or like using AWS as their infrastructure provider or their cloud service provider. So it's fun to just explore these articles, what's happening in the cloud migration space, who's moving over to cloud, and that just gives you a good idea of where it's going. We have these companies that are wanting to migrate over to the cloud. So maybe they are trying to just plan out and strategize what that looks like. But the moment they have locked in the plan, guess who they're going to hire to make it happen? Most likely, solutions architects and cloud consultants to help make that solution happen. And then there's going to be reliability engineers, cloud engineers, DevOps engineers to maintain it once it's all set up. So as you can imagine, there are some roles that are great for the transition period and some roles that are great for the long-term maintenance kind of period or upkeep period once they have really settled into using the cloud. Cool. All right. And this is an example of, a company that would have just moved their platforms and their systems onto the cloud. This is an article that was released in July 2024, which as of today is about 6 months ago. And this is about how the New York Stock Exchange built their real-time market data platform on AWS. Have a look at these kinds of articles and again, news about companies moving to the cloud to get a feel of what industries are moving into the cloud, what companies are looking for engineers, and really to have a good understanding of the company and their use case if you ever were to jump into an interview as well. And you can actually find an article like this, for example, by looking up New York Stock Exchange. All right. You can see over here in this case, the New York Stock Exchange Group migrated all of their non-real-time data offerings to AWS in 2021. So this would have been a couple years back too, which is so exciting. Cloud migration is not a one-off, 1 month long project. It can happen for years and years and years. It's an ongoing kind of process. Even if there is like a company that's going into the cloud, that migration period can last for years. Definitely telecommunications companies, when they move into the cloud, that takes years. Banks, when they move into the cloud, that takes years. Because of the amount of data and the amount of processes that needs to go from on-premise to cloud, and how there are just a lot of requirements that makes it a little bit more tricky. So yeah, these are example articles that you can also read into to have a feel of where the industry is going. And it's very optimistic to see, long-standing companies like the New York Stock Exchange also making the move. All right, team. So what's another reason why New York is a great place for starting your cloud career? I really like this reason. I hope you like this reason too. New York City's AWS Builder Studio is one of only 2 in the entire US. It just goes to show that it's not just other companies that are investing in AWS in New York, it's also AWS or Amazon themselves in New York that's investing in their operations in the city. So let us have a look at what this means for us. So let's look at Builder Studio, New York City, and have a go at this. 20 photos of Amazon's 8,000 square foot lab in NYC, where you can see different AWS technologies in action. Okay, cool. Cloud connected coffee dispensers, giant holograms, other cool applications of AWS fill this interactive and creative space. It's really, really cool to see. You can visit the AWS Builder Studio located inside their newest Manhattan office as a showroom and collaboration space and as a prototyping lab to really see what you can do with Gen AI and AWS technology. Isn't it just so cool that all of this is happening in New York? There's so much you can be doing in New York, my goodness. There's so much fun that you can have, so much experimentation that's happening in New York as well. As you can see, it's not just about, being a cloud engineer or just knowing about, what cloud does. When you really explore what AWS and Amazon are tapping into, you can see that there's also a lot of just prototyping and physical like artifacts or things that you can build with AWS. It truly goes beyond, what is happening in the cloud or in the virtual space as well. I really like that they put physical tools and machines and things that you can interact with to really make you feel that. Oftentimes we think about cloud, we just think about, oh yeah, I'm just going to sit in front of my laptop and have this console open and click around and use these services. But look at all the ways that it can be in the physical world as well. Super cool, eh? So if you're in New York, if you're in Manhattan, you know what to do. Let's check out the Builder Studio. Shout out to that Builder Studio in New York. Next up, again, New York's investments into the city. You can see that we have the AWS Summit happening in New York as well. And AWS Summits are kind of like local conferences, all about what's new in AWS and the local AWS community. So if you'd like to find out more about it, let's visit the summit page for New York. So these summits happen all over the world, and New York is one of the key places for it. You can even watch a rerun of it. You can see what they're investing into or what's interesting in New York, because they start having speakers and talks that are a lot more relevant to the New York community. Yeah, that's awesome. So you can even explore topics. Generative AI clearly is a big topic, things that you could do during the summit, and of course, sign up to be in touch for the 2025 summit as well. Awesome, everyone. Just wanted to shout out that we're getting more people coming in through Zoom and also through Eventbrite. So thank you, Ibrahim. Thank you, Henry. Thank you, Leo. Thank you, Sasha. Thank you, Jane. Thank you, Keith. Thank you, Amin. Thank you so much for joining through Zoom and through Eventbrite as well. That's awesome to see you all here. But this is another big reason why Gen AI is becoming such a big thing, and AWS is becoming such a big thing in New York as well. When you see so much local investments into AWS and into Gen AI, you just know that this is where the careers are also heading into. And you can also have a deep dive into what are some of the skills that they're looking for in these sessions and live demos. What are the services that they're talking about in these sessions? It really goes to show what companies are thinking about and what are those services you can be using to become even more employable as well in the jobs market. All right, so I can see we have Sasha in the chat saying, hi, sorry, I'm late. Can you please catch me up and tell me what I've missed out on? Of course, Sasha. So there's a recording of the entire hour that's up in YouTube after this. So if anyone else has question, Henry, Leo, Amin, Ibrahim, please feel free to add it to the chat and we can talk about that there too. But in terms of a quick rundown of what we've been talking about, we did a quick introduction to cloud computing and all of the cloud computing services. And we also talked a little bit about why New York. We talked about, the investments into AWS just in the last year. There's the Builder Studio that you should definitely check out if you're in Manhattan, talking about how companies like the New York Stock Exchange is also using, if you search up cloud computing and LinkedIn jobs, you can see that there are 18,000 results. And there's so many things that you can do to explore all of the roles, to know what is that cloud landscape in New York, what kind of roles are popular, what kind of roles require more experience, which kind of companies are hiring. There's so much that you can learn from there too. And of course, you can always go into the AWS customer story page to search up New York and just look at all of the results and see that these are some top companies in New York that are using AWS. Isn't that exciting? You can see how they're using it, what services they're using, who they're hiring, check out the titles of the people that are speaking about it, as well as maybe what they might need to work on next, which they sometimes tease about in these user case studies. These are also such good articles to get a feel for what they might ask about in an interview. If you are heading into an interview or writing a cover letter for something like Goldman Sachs hiring for cloud engineers, or a cloud consulting company like FactSet that's hiring for a cloud engineer, you have a really great idea around what is their experience, what are they looking for, what kind of skills could they want from their cloud engineering team. Okay, so that was a quick recap of what we've just talked about. So really it is a coverage of New York companies and customers who are using AWS in New York, and we were up to the summit. Awesome. Okay. And just the last bit about local investments into AWS in New York. You can also look at what is the infrastructure that's happening in New York as well. Here is an article that was released just 2 weeks ago about how AWS is launching upgraded local zones in New York. And this is an example of local infrastructure investments. When AWS is doing stuff like this, it really means that they're putting in more human capital and technology resources into that region. Now, New York is not the only region that they're investing into. If you want to search up like relevant news, you can always search like AWS news. You can search up regions. I would say data centers is also a great keyword to look at. So here you can see there's New Zealand data center over in Auckland, but you can also check out the news to see maybe USA, to see USA news. Before you do that, Amazon also announces a $5 billion investment in Mexico. And this is another example. Oh, I see. Well, it looks like there's going to be a rise in tech jobs or cloud computing jobs and AWS jobs in Mexico, because once that data center is set up, there's going to be a lot more support resources needed to either run that data center or also be available for customers that are now more likely to use cloud computing resources because more is happening there. But let's search USA for once. Here's what's happening near data centers across the US. There's also, I think, if I'm not wrong, there's also something happening in Georgia. So yeah, so AWS to boost Georgia economy with $11 billion an $11 billion data center plan. And another great example of how you can use these investments into different parts of the world to get a feel for what kind of roles that they're hiring for. So based on past experience, when AWS first announced that they're opening a data center in New Zealand, about 2 years later, there were so many more AWS jobs popping up. Cloud support roles needed, cloud engineers needed, some support for maintenance for the data centers are needed, more customers are using it because there are more account managers in New Zealand. And as those customers are using AWS, who will they be asking for help? Cloud engineers, DevOps engineers, cloud security engineers, cloud networking engineers. So this is some great news, some great trends to pick up on and get a feel for where growth is happening. Cool. So I hope that was interesting and informative. I can see in Zoom we have two of our members like Ibrahim and Amin that also popped up. So if you have any questions about what we just went through, let us know and a warm welcome. We have Amin raise their hand. If you'd like to ask a question, would you like to pop it in the chat? Cool. Let me know. If the chat is not working, I'm more than happy to unmute and we can have a chat live as well. Awesome. While we wait for Amin's question, we can always have a sneak peek into some of the other slides. Okay, so the last point was about, what are the trends for investing into your local region? And a final reason for why New York is really the local community and the local support. So starting this journey won't be a lonely journey if you are seeking out those people in New York. So you can see that there's an AWS New York official meetup group, and this is one of the biggest user groups in the world. It has 7,500 members, which is truly one of the biggest numbers I've ever seen for user groups. So you can really see that there's a trend of using AWS, or there's an existing community that's definitely building there. So you can also always search up AWS events, New York, to have a look at maybe joining the summit for sure in 2025, or maybe, whoa, interesting, maybe even seeing what companies are getting into AWS. Very interesting. Cool. Okay, next up is about what roles are out there. And in the meantime, thank you so much, Amin, for the question. I am looking forward to a summer internship this year on AWS. Any tips? Ooh, this is really interesting. Well, first of all, congrats on getting started by looking into a summer internship. Starting with an internship and apprenticeship is such a good way to ease yourself into a full-time role, especially when you're based in the States and in New York, where this is a much more supported kind of career pathway into AWS. Now, in terms of tips for getting that summer internship, there are a few things that can get you started with seeking out what kind of roles you should be going for. And there are some tips related to, how can you stand out once you figure out what you want. In terms of figuring out what roles you want to go for, it starts by first seeking out what is your end goal, and also seeking out what are the possible careers out there. And we're going to go into that soon. The next bit on standing out is a mixture of having some technical skills, having some communication and personality skills as well when it comes to interviews and meeting with potential employers. And then there's also the practical experience that you can showcase as well. When you're looking towards a summer internship like this, just have a checkbox, in your mind. What have I ticked off that gives employers a reason to say yes to me? Genuine question. Reflect on yourself, reflect on what an employer could be looking for when they're hiring, and just say, what have I ticked off? Have I shown them a portfolio of practical experience? Have I tailored my CV? Have I researched the company for an interview? Have I reached out to the recruiter privately to show who I am and show my presence? Have I built my personal brand on LinkedIn? When they look up my name, is there going to be something that they can see to give them another reason for saying yes to me? Start with that mindset. If you have a specific question around some of these, definitely don't hesitate to follow up with that question. But in the meantime, I hope this kind of general advice helps. But yeah, if there's anything specific on your mind, let us know. All right, we have about 15 minutes left. So let us talk about what roles are out there and then how you can get started. So what roles are out there? Some of the most in-demand jobs that require cloud skills, this is in New York. When I did my own search over New York in LinkedIn, you can see cloud engineers, including cloud support engineers, DevOps engineers or DevOps developers, which I thought was quite an interesting role. Usually you see DevOps engineers. To see DevOps developers is quite an interesting one. Net developers, machine learning, engineers, and security analysts. So of course, cloud engineers is one that's where it's very, very easy to see that link with cloud computing and AWS. But of course, all of these roles are now asking for some AWS experience or some AWS skills. If you don't see it clearly, you can always look into the job description and see whether or not it mentions, AWS. I am just clicking into a random one now here, but you can see that this is an example software engineer for cloud provisioning. So this is quite interesting. Wow, okay. This one has been written in a more generic way, I would say. So I can't personally, no keywords like AWS and cloud actually jumps out to me for this one. So I wonder whether cloud is something that they're already assuming, or cloud is something that is actually a part of one of these systems here that they're talking about. Interesting. We also have cloud support engineer, which is a very, very common and popular entry-level role in New York. So you can see AWS is mentioned here. Very cool to see, performing firewall, policy tasks, iconic example, Linux, Microsoft Server, MySQL, awesome, PowerShell, Bash, Python, Ansible, troubleshooting web application performance, some very, very classic things that you can do with AWS for sure. A data engineer junior. Whoa, interesting. Even data engineers are using AWS. Oh, I see. They're working with AWS. Growth team members, incredible engineers and growth team members from companies like AWS. I see that would have been why they got picked up, but they really do use AWS, as you can see later in this job ad. So please don't, I guess, almost restrict yourself to just looking at which role says cloud. This is something that I do see a lot, for people looking for summer internships actually, or for entry-level roles. They kind of gravitate towards anything that has cloud or AWS in the title, but really sometimes the role is also specialized already. So data engineer, security, network. And that's when you would want to see whether AWS is mentioned inside the job description. And that's the reason why you can definitely spot roles that mention AWS. And this is their average 2 to 3 year salary, which means the salary that people would start to get within 2 to 3 years of their career. And this is all grabbed from jobs that we've searched in the last week across LinkedIn. Awesome work, everyone. We'll move on. So we've seen a lot of different job roles across LinkedIn. So how do you know where to start? These are the 3 most popular beginner level, entry level roles. So these are the roles that are less likely to require 2 to 3 years experience, and they're more likely to take on interns. They're more likely to take on people who are just graduating, or they might even say 2 to 3 years experience preferred. If they do say 2 to 3 years experience required, it's more likely that they are still going to be accepting candidates that have less experience, but at least have the practical kind of projects to show for it. The reason why DevOps engineers is not mentioned here, or security engineers, is because they're less likely to take on people who have no cloud experience and are just going into it quite fresh. Usually you would want to take on one of these 3 roles to get a feel of just the environment itself, being in a career that talks about these services, that talks about cloud-related issues, that talks about applications or things you need to install and administrate before you get into more senior or more advanced roles like DevOps and security. Even if you're a junior DevOps engineer, usually DevOps engineers or security engineers are more likely to be expected to have a good understanding, a really, really good understanding of cloud infrastructure, of how applications work in the cloud. And that's where you can use one of these roles to build that proof and build that experience as a stepping stone. Awesome. So that was a roundup of kind of roles that can help you with getting started. And if you have any questions about those roles, check it in the chat. I am closely looking at chats over Eventbrite and also on Zoom. So let me know at any time, and I hope to catch them straight away. So in terms of getting started, these are some tips that might help. Shout out to the question about the summer internship on AWS and any tips. So 3 things you can do today. Number 1, have a think about what kind of cloud role you want to go for. So there are so many different cloud roles that are out there. We've seen all the job titles. It's truly not just cloud engineering. There's so many different types. Here is a quiz that you can do to ask yourself, what role suits you. To find this resource, I'm going to chuck the link in the chat as well, adding that link in the chat so you can have access to it. This is a form or a quiz that you can fill out in about 2 minutes to understand what cloud roles you can get. So I can do a demo of this quiz right now in this call so you can get a feel of how easy it is. What's your favorite part of working on a new project? Perhaps it's creating something from scratch. What do you focus on when facing a challenge? The details. What's the ideal size for your work team? Maybe a relatively small one. And even some more fun questions, like a fun way to spend an afternoon. Putting a jigsaw puzzle together, a fictional character, a genre of movie that you can watch. And you even end up having a role that gets generated from that. So this role is SysOps administrator for this example. There are some characteristics that define a SysOps administrator and who will be good at this. Daily activities, skills needed, the average salary, and even some training options to get started. Can everyone in the chat on Eventbrite as well as on Zoom confirm that they can see the link? I hope you can. If you can't, please let me know, and I can definitely have a look at resending that as well. You can give me a thumbs up as a reaction or just yes in the chat. That would be awesome and very, very helpful. Great. I can see a thumbs up from Zoom, and I'm just watching Eventbrite now. How's everyone in the Eventbrite crew? Okay, great on the Eventbrite side as well. Thank goodness. Okay, that is good to see. All right, everyone. Okay, that sounds good. I'm glad to see that this is working for everyone. Okay, I just have one more question in Eventbrite, which I'm about to address now. Thank you. Let me resend that link for you. Okay, everyone. Thank you so much for everyone's patience. And let's keep on going. So that is resource number 1 to get started. Would someone be happy to share what role they got in the chat? I got SysOps administrator. Pretty cool to see because that is one of the entry-level roles that you can start with. Did someone get support engineering, developer, DevOps, security, cloud architect, consultant? So many different roles out there. Okay, here is thing number 2 that you can learn from. So this is a resource on certification pathways that can help you with landing a role that you saw in that quiz just now. So now that you have the role and you have an understanding of what it does and what skills you can learn, you can actually start to think about what certification pathways can help you with structuring your learning towards that role. So again, if you'd like a link to that resource, let me send that through now. Oh, and a shout out to Ibrahim who says cloud developer. Nice. Very, very cool. Does that line up with what your goals are? I hope it does. Or maybe there's something new that you can explore. All right, so I've put in the link in the chat, our second resource to check out together. So this is a PDF that you can find that's all about your certification journey or pathway towards the role you've just learned about. So for solutions architect, you have cloud practitioner, AI practitioner, so on and so forth, and maybe even a deep dive into security to really build your understanding of building a secure application or secure infrastructure. Here we have application architect, cloud data engineer, systems administrator, DevOps engineer, DevSecOps engineer. Whew, there's so many different roles that you can explore over here. Awesome. And if you had a cloud developer like Ibrahim, you would be able to check out the development one. So software development engineer or cloud engineer, both are great ones to look at. Now, this does not mean that we're saying, oh, well, you should definitely just look into certs and get some certs, and that is the way to guarantee landing a job. As you might have noticed from the market recently, more and more employers and also anyone that is looking for someone to work with in the cloud looks beyond certifications. A certification tells you what you know theoretically, what you know about those services, but it doesn't quite tell an employer or a potential partner to work with or a potential client to work with about your actual hands-on experience with being able to create solutions or solve problems using these services you know about. So please, alongside with just understanding what kind of certification pathways out there, complement that with hands-on projects that you can be doing. If you haven't yet Visit nextwork and start learning with hands-on projects. So this is myself visiting nextwork.org, clicking on Start Learning Today. And then you can, if it hasn't opened already, open this and type in a skill you want to learn. Okay, so in this example, we can see that the cloud practitioner is quite important. There is working with DevOps for solutions architect. So someone who has solutions architect as their role, looking at everyone in the chat that said solutions architect, you can type cloud practitioner like this and see projects related to the cloud practitioner and get started straight away. You can find a project, see what it's about, and get started with the project steps, okay? And if you don't have access to Nextwork yet, here is the link to Nextwork in the chat. Great, everyone. You can also search up DevOps, for example, to find DevOps-related projects. Great. So here are some projects that are related to DevOps, like Terraform, deploying an app with containers, CI/CD pipelines, some great skills related to a DevOps role or being in the DevOps field. I would highly recommend checking out Nextwork so that you can get started with projects. Now, again, building hands-on skills is truly the key to be able to get that hands-on experience that has helped a lot of people understand, firstly, what is that role going to be requiring in the future? And secondly, how can I show an employer or show a potential client that I have the experience or that I have the required knowledge to even get started? Okay. Special bonus, please stay in touch with your local community through events. So you know that there are meetups, but did you know that there's also a community page that you can sign up to so that you can be a part of a local community like in New York and all over the world that's learning AWS. So I'm going to type in the link to that one as well in the chat. It's called community.nextwork.org. Check that out and see whether or not you can find another event that's happening near you. Cool. So I can see that we have some questions around, is it possible to land a solutions architect role in the US from another country? Any advice would be really helpful. This is a really, really good question, and it depends on whether you want to do that role in person or remote. Remote is definitely the best way to get started because there are actually a lot of companies that are based in the US but hire remotely. So an example that I can think of, now this is not AWS, but this is referencing a role that I saw very recently. I think it's called, is it called OpenSea? No, it's not OpenSea. Is it called Ocean? Is it called Ocean? I'll just have a quick, I think they're called DigitalOcean. So this is an example of how you might be able to get a cloud-related role while living in an overseas country. So this is an example of DigitalOcean, which is based all the way in the US, I think, because they have a lot of customers in the US and they mainly work with US clients and US operations. But when you check out their careers page, you can always find how they're hiring. Okay, so we have FAQs. Are you a remote company? Yes, but we're actively hiring in these markets around the world. So actively hiring in Hyderabad, in India, in Karachi, and also offices in those cities. Awesome. So this is an example of how you can be based overseas and still be connected to a US company. There are a lot of AWS support engineer roles that are also happening remotely. This one might be in person, I think, based on my search. But you can always look for support roles that are in, for example, these kinds of areas in a specific area like databases and analytics. Search it up and you are a lot more likely to find a remote role. If you like to go for something that's remote, so many different kinds of roles out there. But you can also see if you want to do something that's in person, have a look at whether one of these countries suit your search. If you're based outside of the US, there are definitely still opportunities outside of there as well. Awesome. I hope that helps. A lot of the time, it does mean that you're starting with a very entry-level role, like not exactly a solutions architect role straight away, but maybe something like cloud support. And you would start as an entry-level cloud support engineer, working remotely, but you would be able to work your way towards gaining that hands-on experience towards a solutions architect role. Cool. I hope that was interesting and helpful. Ask any follow-on questions you might have in the chat. Thank you so much to the support in the chat as well. Thank you so much to Amin saying you're doing great. That means a lot. So thank you so much for coming along. That was a wrap for the main presentation for today. Now, if you have any questions, because we are 5 minutes over time, totally get it if you don't have time to stay for questions. But if you have any other burning questions, just know that you can ask it in the Nextwork community. So I would recommend checking it over here in the Nextwork community. And you can always ask a career question. As you can see, we have a career questions button. And I truly believe that this is a button that maybe not many people know about, but you can definitely use. The Nextwork community is great, not just for when you're stuck in a project, but also when you have a career question. So check out these questions, check out, maybe ask one that you want to ask. And I'm sure the community would love to join in and have a chat with you. All right. So thank you to everyone that has been here in the chat. Thank you to Leo, Sarah, Jane, Lisa, James, George, Henry, we have Ibrahim, we have Amin. That was so much fun to explore how you can start a cloud career all the way in New York. And one day, hopefully, I'll be seeing you there. And hopefully, I'll be seeing you starting your cloud role over there too. All right, quick question to answer before we head off. We have someone asking about creating a portfolio on Nextwork. So if you'd like to start a portfolio on Nextwork, you can start by visiting the Nextwork web app. So check out learn.nextwork.org. You can click on your profile icon and then click on the portfolio button right over here. Cool, so this is a portfolio already with items inside, but you can absolutely edit a title. You can also edit a description like this, and you can share your portfolio right away. So here's the link to my portfolio. I'm gonna add that to the chat so you can see it, but you can always add a new item by clicking add a project, uploading a PDF or a link to a website or maybe a file that you have that represents your project. So I've done one project, I think just yesterday, that I can show. So I did a project on transcribing videos with AI. So you can upload that straight away. And here you go. In your portfolio it goes. And this is how the portfolio will look like to people who are viewing it. Awesome. If you have any other questions about how you can start that portfolio, I would love to show you more in the community too. Thank you, everyone. And yeah, thank you so much to that lovely question. I thought that was a great one. Awesome. It has been oh, I think I was on mute for a second, but that wraps up the event for Reels this time. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Thank you so much for hanging out with Nextwork in this last hour. And I will see you in the community, or I'll see you on social media. The recording of this will be on YouTube. So check out the Nextwork YouTube page to stay up to date with all of our events and all of our videos. For example, if you check out the Nextwork YouTube, you can already see that we have existing videos on becoming a solutions architect or moving into cloud as a software engineer. These are some existing career-related videos you can watch. And of course, live project demos of all our projects as well. Cool beans! Well, I'll see you next time and have fun exploring the world of cloud in New York or with Nextwork. Bye, everyone. Thank you so much. Awesome. I'm going to end the room in both Zoom and Eventbrite now. See ya. Thanks so much for joining. It really means a lot.